Hello and welcome to another decisions training video. In this video, we are going to be covering how to make a decisions flow wait on an external task to complete utilizing decisions assignments. So let's get into why you would want to do this at all. So you have a flow that calls an external API, and you want to pause the flow until that external API finishes its service. So normally, when you have a step that calls a service via API, the decisions flow is just going to stop there until it finishes its call or the call times out. However, let's say that you don't know how long this task is going to take. Maybe you know it's going to exceed a timeout period, or maybe this is a call to a separate system that needs manual review. How would you make the flow wait until this task is completed? Well, the way that we would do that is by setting up an assignment to wait on the external entity. If you are familiar with assignments in Decisions, they assign a form to a user and the flow is paused while the user finishes this assignment or form. Once it's completed, the flow continues. You can utilize this same step to pause a flow to wait on an external service. How this works is that the task is assigned to a user. Then the assignment ID is sent to an external system. So this assignment is stopping the flow, and the assignment ID goes to whatever external task or system needs to complete something before this flow continues. Then the external service will call the decisions assignment service, and using that assignment ID, complete the assignment, allowing the flow to continue. So here's how you would configure such a service. First, you have to create a form. You need a form that can be used to pause this flow. Just do that in the form designer, give it an outcome. After that, you need to assign the form using the add task step and then configure the assignment so that there aren't any validation errors. These are the typical steps you would take when setting up an assignment anyways. Then from here, you want to add additional assignment actions, which will be under the assignment setup category. These actions you want to make sure cannot be responded from via email, and set the outcome name and the action name to be the same set of characters. The same phrase, the same string, as long as they are identical. You can set this up with as many actions as you want the external system to be able to perform. Maybe you have a simple accept or reject. Maybe you have a different set of actions that you want to configure here. This is going to be where you set those up. Afterwards, you want to make sure that you configure on step run, which is in the properties of the add task step, the output assignment ID. There's going to be a little checkbox for this. And then you want to pick or create a flow to run. Inside of this flow, you want to make sure that you have an integration set up with your external API service. And all it needs to do is pass out that assignment ID. This way, the external task knows which assignment to complete when it has finished its processing. Then from there, you want to map the outcome paths. Now, there are 3 here, but technically I've only created 2 additional assignment actions. Those are the ones on the top and bottom here, but you will be able to tell them by whatever name and action name you set those outcome paths to. The third one that you see is from however many form buttons there are. If you have a form that has multiple buttons, you are going to see more than just proceed. So let me show you how to do this, or how this is configured, by giving you a demonstration. So here we are inside of my decisions environment and Postman. Postman is going to simulate the response of the external entity after the task has been completed. So, what is this flow actually doing? Well, it is running a report for a set of users, and it is passing that report to be manually reviewed by a separate system via an API call. So let me start by debugging this so you can see what's going on. I will debug this. and a form has run. It has been assigned to a particular user. You can see it right here. And if I'm just going to minimize this, you can see that the flow is stopped at the form, as we would expect it to be for an assignment. Now, we have configured inside of the assignment to run that particular flow. And this flow is going to initiate that API call. That API call needs to complete, right? And one of the things that's important to pass out in that API call is the assignment ID. I'm going to grab this right now because we will need this later. But your API should be configured to take in that assignment ID and be ready to pass it out once the task has been completed. Okay? So this little flow is inside of the assignment step. And you'll see that we have 3 outcomes here: approved, rejected, and proceed. All right. If I were to specify the session ID for authentication, or I could use username and password, and then specify the assignment ID in the call back, then you will see that we can specify the response that we want. I'm going to set this to rejected. And now, when I send this back, look at this. You will see that my flow has completed. Now, how is this all set up? You've seen how it works. You've seen what this does. This external system was completed and then sent back a call. So how do you set this up? Let me show you, all right? So, the first thing to do is to make sure that this is configured correctly. Assign it to a user, specify assignment name, assignment action name. This is all stuff you need with a standard assignment, and of course you have to set an actual form to display. Now, in the form, you'll see that we have the proceed outcome. That's where this is coming from. Approved and rejected are configured in the assignment setup. So if we click edit, and then we scroll down a little bit, at the very bottom, there's an action to add definitions. This is where we configure the outcomes. So here I want to make sure that I uncheck the can respond via email. And then let's say that we have one called undefined, okay? And I'm going to set the action name to the same as the outcome name. You'll see that this happens automatically. And this has comment option just allows you to pass a comment from the external system if you want to capture that in decisions. I'm going to disable it for this demo, but that is an option. Now you hit done, you see that there's another outcome path, and we map this to wherever we want that outcome to go within the flow. Now, remember that call external API flow? Where was that coming from? Well, that was on the on step run. We set the step flow start type, and it can be either shared flow or private. Both will work for this use case. We want to check that box, output assignment ID, and then we will go to pick or create flow. I've already picked one here, so I can jump in and edit it. Here's where the API call is occurring. I'm sending out the assignment ID to the API, and because of that, I will have the option to call decisions from the API and complete this form. Now, here's where things get a little interesting. You are not actually calling the flow to complete this. You are calling a separate service. The service which you are calling, I will show you now. Here we are inside of the system settings. We want to go to System, Administration, drop down Features, and click All Services. And then the service we are going to look for is the assignment service. If you right-click this, you'll have the option to view the integration details for this particular service. We will scroll all the way down to Process Form Assignment Response. And when I click on this, you will see that it gives me all the information I need to integrate. This will be the endpoint that you will call in decisions from your external service. You will specify the credentials. I like using named sessions because you're just passing in a session ID, but you can also use user credentials and put in username and password as well. Something to note about session ID with this is that you can use a session ID that has accounts that were not actually assigned this form. That is saying, if I were to assign that assignment to admin@decisions.com, but then I authenticate with a different user who is not in that named session, I can still use this named session to complete the assignment. This is what the call looks like. You have the named session, you have to pass in the assignment ID. The response is telling you what path you're going down. In our case, it was approved or rejected. Comment is optional depending on what you set it to be. So this is what I was calling from Postman. See, same service, same input into the body, and then the output is not particularly important in this case, as this is not required to process that form. But that is how you make decisions wait on an external system to complete before having a flow continue. Thank you very much for watching. Hope this video helped.